First of all, I want to say, or sort of repeat, something that we mentioned in the last update, and that is the governor's executive order is still in effect. Social distancing is still being encouraged, and to that end, we are all preparing to begin to reopen the city. Not only city operations, but certainly some of our businesses, and at some point we certainly hope to return to our, at least what the new normal course of processes dealing with our business entities and city government will be. Having said that, it's very clear that May the 11th, Monday, according to the governor's executive order, Lake County is open to begin the process of reopening business and city government relationships. What's also clear in the governor's order is that if need be, municipalities certainly have the authority to enforce and execute even more restrictive practices for their local municipalities. Over the last several days, I've had the opportunity to confer with Dr. Walker and the medical community, as well as our own statisticians here in the city of Gary, in determining what the best course of action for us to be. Having said that, we've concluded collectively that our processes need to be slightly more restrictive than that of the state. And to that end, we anticipate going into some semblance of operations, and certainly not full operations, but the date for reopening the city of Gary as it relates to City Hall or business entities will be May the 18th. We'll continue to operate at the stay-at-home order, as I suggested earlier, and because of that, as I said, it's very imperative that the City Hall and this administration put out a very clear directive. That directive should be one that's not only based on my perception of what we feel will keep our residents safe, but it has to be supported by data and fact-driven information. And to that end, as I said, Dr. Walker will certainly share some additional information with you. So here we are. In terms of city operations, we will be working on the details of the protocol and getting our city employees back to work. That's the first course of action. Beginning May the 18th, we will have workers coming back to all of our facilities, likely in a split schedule format. Also next week, we will have more details surrounded around opening city facilities to the public. Here's the part that's probably most interesting and anticipated by many residents and businesses alike, and that is what protocol will be in place for businesses. Having said that, it's important to refer you back to the governor's exact protocol and executive order, and more specifically, his Back on Track plan, which you can find at backontrack.gov. We'll repeat that particular address at the end. But in the city of Gary, City Hall has received many calls asking us what our plans are to open up businesses. And as I said, first, we need to keep in mind that the governor's executive order is the prevailing dictate for businesses as well as government entities to operate. We also want to let you know that in rolling out his guidelines, he indicated that the plans for Lake County, Marion, and Cass would take effect 1 week after the rest of the state. And having said that, we've decided that that date should be May 18th. Governor Holcomb has also added delays for those counties because of the high rate of COVID infections that continue to exist. In Gary, for the next week, restaurants and bars with food service must continue food service as drive-up only. Retail stores and malls can continue to take orders, but they must be online or over the phone. And their customers must utilize curbside pickup of those facilities or those services that are offered by those stores to receive their products. Bars and nightclubs are something that has been a particular concern, certainly for the people who frequent those and the operators of those. So bars, clubs, nightclubs, personal services, including barbershops, nail salons, and hair salons, will remain closed for one more week. Beginning on May 18th, they may reopen under certain restrictions. And later during the week, next week, Dr. Walker and I will be back again to further detail what those restrictions are. But most importantly, it's imperative that everyone knows that the overall general order in the city of Gary will be extended one more week. As I said earlier, the governor's Back on Track plan is listed on backontrack.in.gov, and it certainly has more details than we're able to offer here today. Religious services is another area of concern for many. In fact, the governor's order suggested that religious services can resume in Lake County after May the 11th. For us, that means the first official day that church services can begin, or a Sunday service, would be May the 17th. And that certainly is consistent with the further restrictions adhered, or at least suggested by this administration. But we'd also like to take into consideration the concerns of the populace. And to that end, many people, including several members of the faith-based community, feel that even that may be slightly challenging and perhaps not in the best interest of their constituents and parishioners. And to that end, the Baptist Ministers Conference has decided to not engage in services until the first Sunday in June. We ask that at the very earliest, all religious services or anything similar to that only begin May the 17th. And with that, there will certainly be additional restrictions, or at least advised restrictions, such as the amount of people that can congregate and certain dictates relative to social distancing. Funeral homes also must strictly adhere to the social distancing guidelines and not have services that will have more than 10 people present until further notice. The next person you hear from will be Paige McNulty, and after her, we'll bring up Dr. Walker to add a little bit more content to the directives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to give a few updates on the behalf of the Gary Community Schools. First and foremost, I want to remind all the parents in the community that we are actively enrolling and registering students right now for the fall. So it's important that you go online or that you call your home school. Those phone numbers are active and live, and the secretaries are standing by so that we can get an accurate number of how many students will be returning in the fall. That's important because of many reasons. One being that we have ordered, as you may have heard, Chromebooks for all the students that include hotspots in them so that all students will have internet access for the fall. And we want to ensure that we have the accurate numbers so that we can get those deployed and out into students' hands in the fall when they return to school. In addition, summer school, as I mentioned for the last couple of Fridays, begins this summer, and we are going to deploy laptops to all students that are enrolled in summer school. So please make sure that your student is enrolled if they're interested in summer school or needing some remediation. 8th graders, I'm going to remind you that we've started our first CTE, Career Technical Education cohort this summer, so why not start and get some jump on your credits this summer to be prepared for high school for next year. We've got 2 classrooms full already virtually for the 8th grade cohort, and we're inviting 8th graders to please sign up if you're interested. I want to thank the parents for calling in and giving us your addresses for those EBT cards that we announced last week that ended today. We will be forwarding those addresses to the State Department, and they will then take it from there. So no further action is needed from you parents at this time. We have the addresses that have been called in, and we will be forwarding them. I also want to tell people we are actively hiring. I know the school is closed right now, but we are still preparing for next school year, and we are looking for Gary residents who have an interest and a passion for working with students. And we are looking for paraprofessionals. You just have to have a high school diploma. I know Illinois Central is looking for bus drivers. We're looking for bus attendants. We're certainly always looking for teachers. So please look on our website and contact our HR department, because we are actively hiring each and every day, and we're looking for some great Gary residents to apply and come work with us. I also want to tell you that we are still actively saluting our seniors who are graduating this year. So we are doing that, and we will also be planning and have planned some events that will be happening virtually this summer, as well as developing a plan for prom in the future. So please check our website for that. I want to echo what the mayor said a few minutes ago about being mindful that we are still closed. That includes the schools and our athletic fields. We've had many students showing up playing games on the sports fields, and I absolutely understand that you want to get outside and get some fresh air. I've got two 10-year-old rambunctious boys at home that are feeling the same way, and I get it. But the schools and the athletic fields are closed, and we are still under an executive order until June 30th for the schools. Now, certainly, if that changes, I will let you know as soon as possible, but right now we are still closed, and we need to adhere to that so that we can make sure that we're all safe and that we're having time to continue to clean our schools and get them ready for the fall. I want to make sure to say thank you to all of our moms out there for everything you're doing to help with the e-learning process, and to have a happy Mother's Day on Sunday. We appreciate everything you do, and you all deserve to say a big pat on the back on behalf of us for everything you do for the kids. Happy Mother's Day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. McNulty. Thank you, Mayor Prince. Thank you, citizens of Gary, for allowing me to come before you today. I'll take this time to wish all the mothers a happy Mother's Day so that I don't forget, and happy Mother's Day to my mom and my wife. Today, first, I'm going to share the numbers with you from the state, the county, and the city, and then just a little bit more about some of the guidances that we will have going forth starting from May 11th. So for the state of Indiana now, for this date, there are 675 new positive cases. Unfortunately, we've had 33 new deaths. We've tested a total in the state of Indiana of 23,146. Unfortunately, in the state of Indiana, we have a total of 1,328 deaths. So those are pretty large numbers. We want to make sure that we're cognizant that COVID is still on the rise, and that we govern ourselves accordingly. In Lake County, we now have 2,359 new cases. Unfortunately, again, there's been 118 deaths, and our total tested has been 11,662. We do keep an eye on our neighboring county, Porter County, who has had 303 positive cases, 8 deaths, and they've tested a total of 2,266 people. If we switch over to our local numbers in the city of Gary, so far in the city of Gary now we have had a total of 488 positives with 16 deaths. So I bring that up because for the last several days now we've had double-digit increases in positive cases in the city of Gary. And so I think it's really important then that we adhere to all the restrictions that we're putting before us still, because we don't want to see numbers of deaths and increase in morbidity and mortality because we are still seeing these cases. Now on May 11th we'll have changing restrictions, but as the governor said, in order to make these loosening of the restrictions work, we have to have a couple of things. One of the things is that we need to have new testing sites. Now we're working on those new testing sites as we go. We haven't established any new testing sites as of yet. So right now in the city of Gary, you can get tested at the Gary Health Department and at Methodist Hospital North Lake campus. Also, we need to establish new contact tracing programs here. They have been established by the city of Gary, pardon me, by the state of Indiana. The city of Gary is still looking to get all the details from the state, and we don't have those yet. So keep in mind, those two things are not completely in place as we're moving forward. We still encourage people to work from home where possible. As of May 11th now, manufacturing and processing businesses in the city of Gary that were not considered essential are now asked to proceed forth, but using CDC guidelines. We're asking residents of Gary 65 and older to continue to shelter in place. That's the state is asking that because people 65 and older are still at the most vulnerable. Now, this is not an edict, but we are still suggesting now that people ages 2 and older wear some type of face covering. Now, that's within reason because you got to think about it. If you're out walking or running, it's not necessary. It can be restrictive, so we're not asking that. But when you enter stores and so forth, if you have it available, we're asking for face coverings. Under the new rules now, the social gathering size has been somewhat lifted, and so that now we are looking at no more than 25 people in a gathering. I also want to give some guidance to our restaurants because we sent out a communication to our restaurants, and we are asking them to send us a plan of business going forward, and also we're asking for just a hand-drawn diagram of what your seating capacity will look like. So those communications have gone out via email, and we ask that you not reopen until we get that information back from you. And we will be sending inspectors out to each restaurant to make sure they're adhering to what they said is in their business plan. We're asking that barbershops, beauty salons, nail parlors, tattoo parlors not open until May 18th, and we will give further direction to you at that time as to what that should look like. And then areas of entertainment, amusement parks, sporting venues, and so forth will remain closed at this time. Once again, we're still in a time of increased COVID infection. We're asking for people to adhere to what we've set forth, and particularly when it comes to gathering. The health department will still enforce, so if there's going to be a house gathering, we're asking that we not throw house parties and we see gatherings of 50, 100 people, and if that is to occur, then we will be enforcing fines that will be levied to the homeowner. Outside of that, I've completed, and I will turn it back over to the mayor. I'm really appreciative to have your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Walker and Dr. McNulty. Let me just, before we close, mention a couple of things. And so the first is that this, by far, is probably the most challenging occurrence that's we faced within the first 100 days of this administration. And to that end, it's just really, really great to know that we have people like Dr. McNulty and Dr. Walker and other of you who have contributed to sharing of information and just all of your efforts to help keep people safe. In doing so, it's just important to note that there are a lot of questions that still exist, and I would say in some instances more questions than we have answers for. That's always been the case from the beginning, but to our credit and certainly to the credit of the two individuals who spoke right before this closing, I believe they both have made a concerted effort, as many of you have, to make sure that we are equipped with accurate information. Dr. Walker mentioned masks and the encouragement of residents to wear them. And I point to that because that within itself is a challenge. You know, as a municipality, in the perfect scenario, we'd love to be able to provide those type of masks for all of our residents, but in the bigger scheme of things, or just from a very factual and economic perspective, we just don't have the bandwidth or the ability to do so. But we are engaging in discussions with other people for creative opportunities to provide at least another avenue for residents who do not have access to PPE, and in this instance masks, to acquire them. Our primary focus has been up to this point, and continues to be, to make sure that the employees of City Hall, including all of our first responders, are equipped with the proper equipment and PPE necessary to continue to do their jobs, but also to respond to the COVID situation in the right place. And we will continue to do so. I guess the only last thing that I could say is that, as Dr. Walker mentioned and I mentioned earlier, as long as we continue to see rises in the COVID-19 disease, we will continue to implement more restrictive protocol for our residents. We, like everyone else, pine to come back to some semblances of normalcy. However, it's very important that we realize that there are certain requirements or necessities that have to be in place in order for us to do so safely. And those are the things that Dr. Walker articulated just a second ago in terms of specific restrictions. But as he said, next week we'll certainly be back at this podium again, hoping to offer a little bit more concrete and specific direction for all of us so that we are aware of what to expect. Lastly, like the other two persons, I want to ask that all of you continue to remain patient and calm, and I certainly want to extend a happy, safe holiday and a warm Mother's Day greeting to all of the mothers within the reach of this broadcast and all over the city and the county of Lake. Thank you again.